Good evening, everybody. I'm Derek Misho, and it is time to go flush in the pocket, presented by Brunswick once again. And tonight we got a real big treat for you. We have the commissioner of the PBA. You can't talk to David Stern, you can't talk to the commissioner of the NHL, MLB, but you can talk to the commissioner of the Professional Bowlers Association, Tom Clark. How are you, sir?
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, did you ever try to get the commissioner of the NBA? You might be surprised. Send him an
I
email.
didn't even bother. Don't you have to pay for some autographs? You know what I mean? So, but
Great. Thanks for what you do for bowling, and the more interviewers and the more podcasts and more people that shed light on the people behind the scenes and what's going on in the game, the better, and just makes people more close to the game. So I appreciate what you do.
man, I really appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on. Let's first get into Troy Lint is your 2023 PBA 50 Player of the Year. Congratulations to him. Last year the guy had no titles. I think he struggled winning. What did you think of what Troy? What do you think of how he throws the ball, and what did you think
Yeah,
of
I,
his
I was
season?
I definitely was introduced to him this year myself. I mean, I
Mhm.
really didn't know much about him, and but the first time I saw him bowl, I think it was the Senior U.S. Open.
Mhm.
Was pretty blown away. I mean, he's got an awesome style. He's very strong. He's an extremely strong athlete, and he's got a high backswing and a lot of power, and so he really kind of seems to overpower the lane a little bit. And he used Purple Hammer a lot of the year and
Mhm.
did well. And then I watched him this week. I was down at the PBA 50 Tournament of Champions in Florida, and it was a long pattern and couldn't use urethane. And he was kind of just as awesome with reactive and playing in. And so you can tell he can do a lot of things, and he's a good competitor. So, I really love to see people like him who didn't necessarily have a great PBA career. They get their new opportunity, a new lease on life in the PBA 50, and make the most of it. And that's an awesome Player of the Year.
So why did you change the name of the PBA Senior Tour to the PBA 50 Tour? Was it like senior is kind of derogatory, or was it just like you don't want to? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was kind of it was in line at the same time we had also introduced PBA 24 to it was an effort to get younger players into the PBA, and we said we'll have the PBA 50 and for 50 and older, and then PBA 60 for the super seniors. And yeah, it's partly to just get that word senior out of there, like you
Sure.
see a lot of the other tours in sports. And it was right around the time that we were about to enter an incredible era on the senior tour with Pete Weber and Walter Ray and Parker Bone and Norm Duke and Leto, and all these guys were coming out at the same time,
Mhm.
and so kind of just didn't want to call them seniors, and
Sure.
so they
No.
were PBA 50. It seems to have stuck, but
Yeah.
I think we could continue to build on that. And I think those guys really kept the PBA 50 going, the last few years, 10 years, to the point where everyone still just knows they're going to join. Like this year, we had 5 new winners on the PBA 50 tour, and
Mhm.
guys like Dan Knowlton and Haggett, and we had a lot of players who fit that mold that I was talking about with Troy Lint.
Mhm.
That came out after not necessarily having these long PBA careers, but it means so much to do well on that tour, and a lot of that is because of the Hall of Famers that are out there.
Mhm. Yeah. So let's we're going to talk about the PBA 50 coming about. Let's dive into it. How did you get started bowling?
Uh, my father,
Yeah.
my dad was a very good bowler, and I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and bowling's very, at least it was. I mean, it's gone down a little bit in Syracuse. It used to be a real hotbed, for bowling, and it was just a bowling center in at every corner, it seemed like. And so my dad got me in, and both my parents very supportive, and I can remember being in junior tournaments and my mom just sitting there watching, and and if someone said something to her like, "Oh yeah, your son's a really he's a good spare shooter," or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and if she would tell me that, those things stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that people today, and I always try to remember that, like what mattered to keep me going, in a game, and when you get any kind of positive reinforcement and support from parents. It goes a long way. Keeps you going, keeps you wanting to get better and to practice. And it's something to remember as we try to get kids in the game today. Is that parents really are the key? I mean, they're the ones that are bringing them to the center. They're the ones that they're paying the money for kids. And I think that when I grew up, there were more parents and more people who bowled, and so it was a little bit easier to hand it down to the next generation, or it was more natural. But now there's less people that bowl in general. So our challenge is we have to educate non-bowling parents on the virtues of the game so that they put their kids in bowling, and
Mm-hmm.
things like college scholarship money. That's number one on the list, but really just all of the benefits of being involved with this game, just the fun and the camaraderie, and a sport that you have to work on and to perfect. And it's very difficult mentally and physically. But that's what makes it fun. And so if more and more parents understand that,
Mm-hmm.
um, they'll put their kids in the game, and that's really what we need.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, is that who coached you? Was your father?
Yeah. But I really just learned by watching.
Mm-hmm.
It's he kind of just let me chuck it down the lane any way I wanted. I mean, my first way I bowled was crazy. I was just throwing it almost, and
Mm-hmm.
I always lofted it, and threw it
Right.
really hard, as hard as I could as a little kid. And he was a very smooth, bowler, very good, and a great classic, release and classic approach. And he didn't stop me and say, don't do that, do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important too. You got to let people have fun and find their own way in the
Mm-hmm.
game. So I've never really had like this one coach who was helping me.
How great is it to see what Rory's doing?
Yeah, that's fun. And I try to do the same. Well, obviously my son's a two-hand bowler, and I've
Yep.
never bowled two-handed. I could never even do it. I could never
Mm-hmm.
try.
Mm-hmm.
And so, same type of thing. Hey, nowadays why would you change someone? And he
Right.
didn't take up two-hand bowling because watching the pros or anything like that. It was just bringing him bowling when he was a little kid, and when you're little, and the only way you could really throw it was with two hands, and he just stuck with it. And in the old days, people would stop you from doing that, and they'd say, "Okay, now you're old enough. This is
Mm-hmm.
how you're supposed to bowl."
Mm-hmm.
And now people don't really say that anymore, because why would you stop someone from progressing in the game
Right.
with so many great professionals succeeding bowling that way? So it's fun to watch that evolution, but it's very nerve-wracking being a parent and
Sure.
watching your kid. Bowling is, I try to explain it to the PBA too, in that if you care about who's bowling in a match or a tournament, it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the most exciting sports to watch. I mean, there's so much luck involved. There's so much pressure involved. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many close moments. There's such less room for error than people could ever imagine. There's and when it gets down to the end, I mean, it's just so exciting to watch a tournament unfold if you care about someone in that tournament. And obviously you care about your own kid. And so
Mm-hmm.
that makes it, really gripping sporting entertainment. And so our challenge as a PBA is to get as many people as possible to know the PBA bowlers. And that way they'll care. So when you care if someone wins or loses, or want to root for someone or against someone, it suddenly makes bowling so addictive. You have to watch it every week.
I actually, you know what? We're going to talk about it coming up pretty soon, but I actually watched the 2009 Cheetah Championship last night. I've probably watched that like 40, 50, maybe even 60 times. We'll talk about that coming up. So let's see. Let me get so When did you discover the PBA tour as a fan?
Yeah, as a little kid, my family watched every Saturday afternoon, and my father qualified once for a PBA event, but that was around 1982 or 84, something like that, when I was 12 or 13. Um, but um, but when I was 5, 6, 7, I you know got into that rhythm of every Saturday afternoon you watched bowling. It was kind of like after you bowled in your youth league, and around 78 or so, 78, 79, when I was 10, and that's my favorite baseball team was from 78. My favorite everything was from 78.
Mhm.
That's when I really started following the PBA and watching it with a little bit more, um, where things were sticking with me, and I was rooting for people a little bit more. And I'd bowl. It's kind of a classic story from that era, that when I tell people I did it, they say I did the same thing. And what I did was I'd bowl in the hallway, while the show was on my plastic pins, and you'd set them up and try to bowl strikes and bowl against Earl Anthony, and and that's pretty much. It sounds like you did the same. And
Have you ever put a hole in the wall?
from not from bowling, but from basketball, I have.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you this. So my parents had when we lived one of our houses, they had a hallway, and it was obviously wasn't 60 feet, but it could pass for a bowling lane. And so I would put a Fisher Price pin set at the end of the pin, and I would that Fisher Price ball, I would put my hands in it, I would throw it like a regular ball. And I actually um, you know, put a hole in the wall, and they said, okay, if you're gonna bowl in the hole, use this board, put it up again so you don't. Okay, sure, no problem. So I feel like I feel like everybody that is like us has done that, has bowled in the hallway or something like that.
Right. I go home now, and my parents still live in the same house that I grew up in, and
Yeah.
I look at that hallway now, and I say, "Wow, I thought that was a bowling lane. It looks like about 2 feet long." I mean, I really, when I was a little kid, it was just like my lane, So
Yeah. Did you ever think, and I know we're gonna talk about it coming up, but did you ever think when you were doing that and that, man, one day I'm gonna be the commissioner of the PBA?
no, not really. No, I mean, but like when I think of those years and my heroes in bowling, it was Marshall Holman and Mark Roth and Earl, and those guys were my heroes. And then as I became involved with the
Yeah.
industry, and now and to this day, Marshall Holman's just one of the good friends of mine,
Yep.
and Mark
Mhm.
Roth was, and Mark Roth's, and
Mhm.
his death was, it really hit me hard. It was one of the hardest things that I've gone through as the commissioner, and they were great friends, and I just really enjoyed getting to know them and hang out with them, and that alone is kind of amazing when you think you're in the hallway watching these guys on TV, and they're like superstars to you, and then they
Yep.
become your friends.
I,
Now, I never would have thought that I'd be the commissioner when I was bowling. Then I think I was thinking more about bowling, when I
right.
was.
And it's funny too because when I was watching, I'll take the 93 Phoenix Open at Fairlane Squaw Peak, and Parker won that tournament. If you would have told me 20 years later I'm going to meet him and we're going to become best friends, like Parker and I are really good friends. I'm good friends with a lot of those guys. And I would have been like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. These guys, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they're
being,
very approachable, and they're very
oh,
down to earth, and they're very bowling centers, and the fans that come to events, and people that bowl in leagues in their areas where they live. You're just going to run into them in a very familiar place, a
yep,
friendly place like a bowling center,
yep,
and when you share the same interest in that game, and really when they can see when you love a game, because
mhm.
you know and they appreciate that. I mean, that's where there's the potential for those types of relationships.
Parker's told me before that he's never met anybody who loves a sport more than I do. And I
Nice.
appreciate that. Yeah. So
That's great.
I'm sure you know this guy. Hold on. Let's see if I can get it up there. Adam says, hey,
Oh,
Derek and Tom. See you in
That's right.
3 weeks.
There's a real fan right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
never even, as a fan, I never did the things that Adam does. He flies all around the country chasing after us. He's been to Reno and
Yep.
Portland,
Yep.
and he's gotten to know everybody too. And
Yep.
I remember introducing him at the PBA League draft in Reno. It must have been the start of the PBA League around 2014 or 2015,
Yeah.
and everybody gave him like a standing ovation,
Oh, wow.
because they were just really. It was cool that he came all that way and was in the
Yep.
crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And of course, he says, rest in peace, Mark Roth. He's definitely one of the best. So yeah, I mean, Adam, thanks for watching. So who you might have already mentioned it, but who were some of your favorite professionals growing up?
yeah. Roth and Holman were my two favorites, and then of course Earl was like a god almost, and then Steve Cook and Mike Albee, and
Mhm.
but then when this young guy named Pete Weber came along, I mean, I think we were all kind of in awe, of him, and he was, it's kind of like when you're the son of Dick Weber, and you come in with all this hype, and then you watch him, and he doesn't really bowl like Dick Weber at all, and he has so much power, and he's so young, and his talent was just so incredible, and his intensity. You just wanted Pete, to make the show, and and his career was so long. That's another. It's kind of like what we were just talking about. It's interesting that I could be a fan
Mhm.
of someone like Pete
Mhm.
Weber, and then
Now he's
be
in
the
your cell phone.
commissioner of the
Yeah.
sport when
Yeah.
he's competing still at the highest level. I mean, I was the commissioner when he won. Who do you think you are? I am. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
that was uh, you know, and I don't think there's really a sport like that. If you think about it, I mean, you know, in almost every other sport, um, players' careers end at a age like 40 or so,
Yep.
and it's kind of almost impossible that someone who had grown up
Mhm.
watching an NFL player, for example, could then become the commissioner, and the players that he watched growing up would still be active,
Mhm.
you know, and so it's kind of a unique, a unique situation. But yeah, Pete's another one that just jumps out as I'm still every time I see him, I stand there and watch him bowl and get mesmerized by his game. He's he's at one with the game, and so he's always been one I've watched.
Now I remember you saying like when about Pete, like before commissioners before would just I feel like they would try to fine him any chance they got, suspend him any chance they got. You said I think you said something like, "Oh, you could say whatever you want. I'm not going to fine you." What? How did that come about? I mean, if it's
He's
too
been fine.
personal,
He's been fine since I've been
yeah,
commissioner.
okay, all right,
You can't say anything, you know. And it's funny, his brother John runs the PBA 50 tour, so his
yeah.
brother's fined him too.
Oh my god, okay,
But no, I certainly have more than a soft spot for him. I think that
yep,
his heart's always in the right place, and
mhm,
what he's done for the PBA is immeasurable. And there's a lot of guys like that. I don't care. I mean, there's different rules for different people sometimes. I mean,
sure,
and I'm not afraid to say that. I mean, it's when you've earned it, you've earned it. And
mhm,
but there's always a line, and there's always a time when you have to sometimes get people back in line.
absolutely,
And so, I understand why they were put in situations
mhm.
back in the day to have to suspend them or fine them or something happened. But yeah, it's tough for Pete to get in trouble with me.
Good, yeah. So when you were growing up and they said, and somebody said, "Hey, Tom, what do you want to do with the PBA?" Did you dream? Was it your dream that you would be a pro bowler, or like were you kind of wanting to, compete on the PBA tour, or 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 did you want to do
Yeah,
something
well,
else?
yeah. I mean, that was the fantasy. I mean, that was the
Mhm.
dream, and I was bowling at a high level as a junior bowler. I mean, these kids today have so many more ways to gauge where they stand.
Mhm.
We were just local, and how were you in your home city or your home state, and
Right.
that's all you could probably know. And I was definitely in the top, percentile, in as a kid. But then, and I wanted to go bowl in college and see what would happen. But um, I just was just talking to Chris Barnes the other day about it at the PBA 50 event, which I can't believe he's on PBA 50, but
I know, right?
he's about my age, and he's a year younger than I am.
Mm.
And when I first ran up against Chris Barnes in college, that it really put a light bulb on in my head that was like, I will never be that good. And
Mhm.
he's just you could tell the way that he was on the approach, the way he threw the ball, the way he carried himself, that you're standing next to this machine almost of superior talent. I think Barnes is underrated in the history of the game. Actually, I think he's one of
Yeah.
the greatest bowlers who ever lived. And when you see that up close, I'm sure it's kind of like a pretty good college basketball player, and all of a sudden you're playing against Michael Jordan, and you go,
Mhm.
wait a second, I've never seen this before. I don't know how to deal with this. And um, a lot of people might say, no, it's just bowling and you can go. Now, I kind of have an eye for talent and ability. And truthfully, I didn't understand when I was a kid the amount of work that you had to put in, or that you even could put in, to
Mhm.
become a better player, from a fitness standpoint, a mental game standpoint, and a practice standpoint. That to be able to be as versatile and as able to score so consistently high, no matter what the circumstances, and under any kind of circumstance. And I kind of learned that in college, and realized, okay, pro bowling is not the direction that I'm going to go.
Mhm. All right. So by the way, real quick, just out of curiosity, when you were in Syracuse, when you were living there, did you bowl at Strike and Spare a lot? I'm sure you did.
Yeah, not as now. Now that and Flamingo Bowl are pretty much the only two places left. There's only
Yeah.
a few, but I bowled at Syracuse Bowling Center, which isn't there anymore. Fairmount Bowling Center, which isn't there anymore.
Mhm.
Thunderbird Lanes in Baldwinsville, it's not there anymore. All my favorite places that I used
Yeah.
to score, Imperial Lanes, they're not there. And
Yeah.
but Strike and Spare is still standing. And yeah, we definitely we had a junior traveling league, like a lot of people have growing up, and we bowl
Mhm.
there often. Holiday Bowl is where the PBA bowled in Syracuse, and it was a 3-bay house. It was really a unique place. That's actually the first place I ever saw Pete Weber in person. He was just a kid. I was probably 12 and he was probably 17 or 18. And I
Mhm.
saw him in the arcade, playing games, and and he was in the tournament. And and you never forget that he's because of his greatness. And but Holiday Bowl is not there anymore either. So it's kind of sad,
Mhm. Yeah.
all the places that we used to go.
Sure. How did you get started? How did you start the process of, you eventually make it to USA Today, you're a sports writer. Where did you start your sports writing career, and how did you land at USA Today? And how did even the thought of you being the commissioner of the PBA happen?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how things just lead to one to another. I love all sports. I've
Mhm.
been a sports nut, sports fans. I played up almost every sport, and I also love writing. So you kind of combine those two things, and I love reading about sports. So
Mhm.
I would race to get the newspaper every day, and I'd wait outside the window to get the newspaper. For the kids, this is before you know before there were online stuff. There was no such thing as online, and there was no such thing as YouTube or anything like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I would the media was newspapers basically, and magazines, and I just couldn't wait for Sports Illustrated, and I couldn't wait for the sports page to come. And the people that wrote about sports became heroes to me too. And so I just got into that and figured what a life that would be, to be able to attend sporting events and write about them and get paid for that. That's
Mhm.
not even work, was the way I looked at it. So
Sure. Yep.
that kind of became my idea, and to write about sports. And I wrote about high school sports when I was in high school for like local small papers, penny savers, anything. And they'd print the stuff, and it was really good. And then I got a job at the Syracuse Herald Journal, which is a major newspaper in Syracuse, um, and I was writing. Now it's the Syracuse Post Standard, or now I don't know what they call it now.
Mhm.
Everything's changed, but it was the major, newspaper in Syracuse. And when I was 18 years old and 17 years old in high school, I'd go in and work on the weekends, work on Friday night. I was like a contributing writer. So I had a really good head start even before college of working at a major newspaper, just because of my ambition um, and and because of the um, I loved it, and would do anything to be part of the paper, just take scores over the phone from high school football and things like that. And so I became addicted to that too. And when I went to college, I bowled, but I also worked at the school paper and became the sports editor and then the managing editor and loved putting together a newspaper in school. And then when I got out of college, I started my own sports magazine in Syracuse, back in Syracuse, founded it, ran it for about 2 years, and then I sold it and moved down to Virginia and started working at daily newspapers and rose up to be a managing editor for papers in Virginia, then executive editor in North Carolina in this newspaper chain called Media General. And from there, it was like USA Today when I was in college was kind of my favorite paper. I mean, I loved when I was away from home, and at the time, it was the largest circulated newspaper. It had the best sports section, had all the best information and stats, and so being able to try to get a job there and work there was kind of like, I've said, it's like playing for the Yankees. It was just going to the big leagues. And when I got to USA Today in 2000, they had a sports staff of 90 people, and they're all like legends in sports writing and sports, and I learned so much. Um, but I was involved. My main job was golf and tennis, and the NBA and the NFL. Those were the sports that I covered the most and put out the biggest sections on. And but what I did on the side, because I always loved bowling, and bowling never got respect in major media,
Yeah.
I would pitch bowling stories to USA Today all the time, and I got a few of them in. One,
Mhm.
if you remember, I don't know if you ever saw it, but I bowled in a PBA event and wrote about it uh,
Okay.
as a first person, what it was like, and that was in on the front page of USA Today. And then I wrote I wrote a story about the proliferation of 300 games and how that has changed over the years and why, and talked to all the people involved. And then I started a weekly um, online column when usatoday.com first started,
Mhm.
and about bowling. And I did it completely just because I enjoyed it. I wasn't even paid for that. It wasn't my job. I just said, I want to do this. And they said, well, we've got space online. And so every once a week, I was writing about the PBA, writing about what I do to fix bowling. Like I knew, and what happened was a bunch of people that were in the bowling industry read that. And so they started contacting me, and USBC, which had just formed,
Mhm. Right.
just combined between EABC and WIBC and YABA.
Mhm.
Um, Roger Dalkin was the chief executive then, and they basically recruited me to and said, why don't you, all these great ideas you have, why don't you come do them, and for real in the industry. And so I had to make a big decision, whether I move to work in essentially a PR, a marketing role at a bowling institution, and leave, legitimate journalism, which was kind of my love at the time.
Mhm.
So it was very hard. I mean, I remember my last day at USA Today, I was just, in tears. It was difficult to
Mhm.
leave
Mhm.
a group like that. But they wished me well, and thought that, well, follow this passion. And they basically told me, you'll never go back to journalism once you're out of it. And that scared me. But I really had it in my head that I want to help bowling. I just want to help and try to be involved. I want to sit at the table and find out, how are they talking about these things, and how can we get more people interested in the game, and how can we make bowling better. And so I thought working at the USBC would be a great opportunity to do that. That's why I moved to Milwaukee, where I
Mhm.
still live now,
Mhm.
because headquarters were here in Milwaukee for the USBC, and then they moved. And right when they moved to Texas, I had been working at USBC for about 3 years and really did a lot of television media. I kind of brought back women's bowling, actually, brought back the Women's US Open, which had
Hmm.
been gone, and brought back a PBA women's series, working with the PBA when I was with USBC, because I
Yeah.
really believe in television as being the place where you can reach the most people and get more people involved with the game. And so I worked hard on that. We started a show called the Bowling's Clash of Champions, which was really awesome on CBS. And so I got involved with negotiations with television networks.
Hmm.
Uh, and when I had been at USA Today, I got so many great contacts in the major sports and learned so much about how those sports run, how they get how they go from one tier to another tier, where the money comes from, how to build a fan base. I would pick the brains of all those guys that ran tennis, that ran golf, even superstars like Billie Jean King became a friend, because I'm covering tennis and she was tennis,
Yeah.
and so um, it kind of combined all of those things. And the PBA was Fred Schreier was the commissioner and CEO at the time. He
Hmm.
basically said to me, the things you're doing for USBC would be better for the PBA. And so he kind of got me to leave the USBC and go to the PBA, where I could get more involved with those types of things that were right up my alley.
Yeah.
So he brought me in, and he made me his deputy commissioner.
Hmm.
And so that's where I learned, all of the financial, the part of the game that, and the sport that I hadn't had any access to was the financial side of it, and knowing exactly the revenue streams and the expenses. And so that's what I got a real good education on real soon once I joined the PBA.
Yeah.
That was 2008.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. So, I mean, I mean, obviously you don't have to tell us what it is, but is there somebody that you look at your phone contacts and you're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I have their number." I mean, it's like it's crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, with in the bowling world, it's amazing. It's crazy, even just on Facebook,
sure.
or my son bowls, puts a post up, and the people that like it are Mike Albee and Marshall Holman
Yep.
and Bill Chrisman, and you say, wow, that's amazing. That's,
Yeah.
but then, I've run into a lot of people that are famous and have them in my phone, or the people that we've had as celebrities bowl in the PBA, like Chris Paul,
Yep.
and To. I mean,
Oh yeah.
texting back and forth with To is always fun.
I
So
bet.
guys like that make it it's interesting.
I bet. What did the people? Because I asked basically six and seven, kind of together. But what did the people, the commissioners before you, what did they do right? What did they do wrong? I guess. I mean, I guess we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but what did they do right, and what were they like? Well, I'm gonna fix this right now.
Uh, well, I think what they did well was just continually um, maintain the PBA brand as the pinnacle of the sport of bowling, the best events, the greatest players in the world, and having that be what we represent. And that was really what you always need to remember. And it moves, it changes. And when I
Mhm.
first started with the PBA, there was an element of that I did need to. I felt like I needed to address immediately, which was the international players.
Mhm.
For many, many years, the only international players that really mattered had come to the PBA, like Amleto or Mika, a few others, through the years, but it was
Matt
really
Carlson.
spotty.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mats,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you've heard about some international players like Pang and some others, but that had never joined the PBA. But when I first came into the PBA, I had been working for the USBC, and I'd actually, you know, been involved with Team USA and kind of studied the opponents of the US, and realized that there are great players out there. As I said, I do have a certain eye for talent and ability. And when I went and watched, people like Belmo and Osku and Dom Barrett and Martin Larson, and I had some help finding these guys from people like Tim Mack and Mika, who would let me know, oh, you got to watch this guy, and you got to watch this guy, and so I would go watch them, and I said to myself, these guys are as good as the players on the PBA Tour. And now that I'm responsible for the PBA Tour, I need to make sure the greatest players in the world are on the PBA Tour and not bowling around the world and all these other events. And so it became a really big initiative for me personally to essentially recruit them, but also to make it palatable for them to come to the U.S. and to work schedules and to make it easier for them to take part. They were kind of shut out before I got there, and how they would be able to compete on the PBA Tour when the only way you can get in is if you come over and bowl a PTQ. It's tough to fly from Finland to bowl 8 games against 100 people to try to get 8 spots into a tournament, and if you don't make it, you have to sit around for a week. It was almost impossible. So I was really proud of that, and that helped form the World Series of Bowling, and a lot of those international players came to that, and they've been hooked ever since. I knew they would. Once they had a taste of the PBA Tour, I knew they'd want to come back because they're great competitors. They want to bowl the best, and they want those titles, and they want that prestige. And it's the place where you become a legend in our sport is the PBA, and so I'm really proud of the growth internationally. I mean, we've went from about 3 countries having membership in the PBA to almost 30 now, and we've had so many titleists come from all over the world over the last 10 years since I've been here, and that helps spread the brand worldwide.
So let's pretend that you're being hired as the commissioner during this podcast, and somebody says to you, Tom, tell me everything or the most important things that you're going to do as the commissioner of the PBA. What are they? Have you accomplished them? And what else would you like to accomplish?
Well, there was a couple of things that I accomplished just a few years ago, just like 3 or 4 years ago, that were the big picture items that were my goals coming in, besides that international growth and maintaining the brand. And that was to secure a strong media partner for our television. And so really the greatest accomplishment in my mind that I've had is signing Fox to be our new television partner. And we did that deal in 2018. Our first season was 2019. And now we just signed on for another 2 years. And their investment in the game, plus opening up windows for us to be on broadcast television, which, when the PBA left ABC in 1997, it hadn't been back on broadcast television except for once when we kind of bought our way on that one year on ABC when Mika won the $1 million TOC. Other than that 1 week, we were not on broadcast television until the Fox deal in 2019. And now we're going to be on 8 times next year on broadcast television. And that's really the key to the success of any professional sport, is a great media partnership and exposure on broadcast television. And so I was able to do that. I got it done. I mean, to me, that was a win. And so now what you want to do is build on that and help and make the ratings get higher and bring the demos down so that it's a more attractive to sponsors. And the other thing that I really needed to do, and I kind of did it twice, was find a great title sponsor, to attach themselves to it. And the first time was Go Bowling, actually. And getting the BPAA and working with the BPAA to bring them on. That helped us before the big sale that we made that was essentially a sponsor. It's kind of still a sponsorship, but they own the PBA, which is Bolero. And so I, was really the point person in selling the PBA, because our previous owners, they were going to sell for 3 or 4 years. That was kind of my side job, is let's find the right buyer and find someone that will by the PBA, because what they did, they're all in the Hall of Fame for what they did for bowling, but they were done. And so we had to find it. And if we didn't, we were going to be in big trouble because if there wasn't another owner for the PBA, was it going to survive? So finding Bolero, selling to Bolero was the other big thing. So now in a way, I kind of hand it off at this point, and Bolero is now in charge of finding sponsorships. And that's really always going to be the key, to growing the game. And more money, money is the key, and so from my perspective, the way to get more money and to have more sponsors and is to reach more people, because if you know that your brand being attached to the PBA is going to reach more people, and those people are going to be into it, and it will have impact, then you'll be able to secure those sponsors. And so both Fox and Bolero have that responsibility of selling sponsorship that will help the PBA grow. And now Bolero, in that ownership, can utilize the PBA to help promote going into their centers, and like Strike and Spare and Syracuse, and so hopefully that circle, that wheel that gets people to notice bowling, go bowling, or go bowling and then watch bowling, whatever it is, can continue to turn in positive ways for the competitive side of the game, which is the part of bowling that I care about. Bolero has to worry about both sides of the game, the sport, but then also the entertainment, and just getting people to come out and have parties and have fun with the game. And that's the huge part of their business, and really any bowling center. But for me personally, it's the sport, that really drives me.
So, right. So what kind of inspired me to put this on Saturdays? Two things. One, nobody does a podcast on Saturday. Two, in my opinion, in my heart, bowling was born on Saturday because ABC, that was Saturday. What would it take for the PBA to move from Sunday to Saturday? Is it ever possible, or is it just a sponsorship deal, or what has to happen? I mean, I know that's kind of a small.
Well, yeah. Well, the biggest difference in television between when we grew up and bowling was on Saturday and today is it was more difficult to broadcast sports back then, and it was more expensive. And so it wasn't like today where every single game of every sport is on television and every college football game is on. And so, and every college basketball game is on nationally. And it used to be like one game of the week, if lucky, in any sport. And so it's changed the dynamics of and the competition for when you can get really positive slots. Now, last year on Fox, we were on Saturday a few times. I mean, we were on almost every Saturday before a Sunday final of a major championship. We had some kind of semifinal or some kind of preamble to that, similar to golf, where golf's on for 4 days. The Masters is on Sunday, the finals in golf, but on Saturday is when they set the table, and it becomes where, and people get engaged with what's going on and know that tomorrow's the final. And we did a few things like that last year. There'll probably be less of that next year, but there will be some Saturdays. A lot of people have always talked about, why don't you actually get off the weekend, because there's so many sports, and why don't you do like Tuesday night bowling, Monday night bowling? And we've done a bunch of that too. We've tried it at the World Series. We've done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday live every night of a week. And there's more competition on the weeknights, believe it or not, than on the weekdays, because people watch regular television on those nights. So there's always, it's not a bad idea to try to be every Saturday. Sunday sort of became bowling, through the whole ESPN era. Their whole ad campaign was Sundays are for bowling.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is your best moment as a PBA commissioner?
Well, I mean,
or has it happened yet?
I mean, on the lanes, on the lanes, there've been some great moments. I mean, we talked about Pete's win, and that was incredible. Or Kelly Kulick winning the TOC was amazing
Yep.
to be there. You could feel the electricity, and
Yep.
Belmo when he won his 11th major
Oof.
at the World Series, and he became the all-time
Nope.
greatest in
Mhm.
major championships history. Was against Jacob. That was amazing. Norm Duke when Norm won 2 weeks in a row when he was
Ah.
54. That was incredible, and the way he did it, it was just amazing. It was in both weeks. It was like dual pattern events. But I've PBA League, when we've walked in there, and Bayside Bowl is just going crazy, and you can't have better fans. The first playoffs in 2019 when it was Chris Prather against Bill O'Neill, I'll never forget that. It was the greatest fan support I've ever heard or been around, and the place was exploding. And so to me, it's like when you feel the goosebumps and you feel the roof raising up, that's when you're part of a great sporting event. And anytime that happens, last year when Norm retired and threw
Mhm.
that last shot at the PBA League in a best-of-5 match that went to the 5th game, and it was so nerve-wracking in there. Guys couldn't even make spares. It was unbelievable so when you build an event to get to a point where everyone's nervous is when I love it. I mean, that's the greatest. Then off the lanes, I think signing Fox was really the greatest thing, and being
Mhm.
able to just go to LA and sit there in the executive's office and sign that contract. And I felt like, you know what, we did it, because we had a really small staff from 2013 to 2018, and we had basically a 5-year plan, and it was to keep this thing afloat
Mhm.
and stay, and so that when our ESPN deal ends, either we're going to sign back with ESPN or we're going to find somebody else. We'll have the right to find somebody else, and we really rolled the dice to try to make sure that was going to be the next big thing that would propel the PBA for many more years. And when we got that, all those people that were involved, I couldn't thank them enough. So, and
Mhm.
building that staff too was really special to me, and probably the best moment whenever they would succeed individually, or even if they were able to retire, and being able to put Kirk Von Kruger and Mary Von Kruger in the Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
that was a great moment for me. So there's probably just been too many. I love the job. I love, it's hard, but it's also just my whole life. It's really what, um, it's what I do. I mean, all day today, I was trying to work on next year's World Series of bowling, and what are we going to do? And
Mhm.
I say to
Mhm.
myself, shouldn't I be doing something else? And shouldn't I be, shouldn't I be having fun doing it? And I realized this is what I do. This is what's fun, for
Yeah.
me. So.
Yeah. Shouldn't you be playing golf? No. Uh,
I can't stand it. Whenever I play golf, I wish golf was more like 13 or 14 holes. By the
yeah.
15th hole, I'm just done.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. What would you say is your worst moment as a PBA commissioner?
Uh, Worst moment. Well, I mean, COVID was pretty bad. I
Oh.
mean, the World Series was going on in Vegas, and
Mhm.
that was pretty sad. That was pretty bad, but it was actually ended up being a positive, because we came up with some original ideas to stay afloat. But that was pretty devastating, um, and then we've had a lot of great people pass away. Like this year. Well, geez, Mark Anderson, you
Mhm.
know, has been hurting for a few days now, and Tom Strobel from
Oh.
Thunder Bowl, and Jim
Mhm.
Doty from
Yep.
Woodland Bowl. I mean, those were two of our greatest partners. These bowling centers they open their doors for us, and they love the PBA, and they do whatever they can for the PBA. And guys like Tom and Jim, they're just unmatched supporters. And not having them anymore is pretty devastating. The And then even some of the players that just come to mind, like Tony Reyes when he died, that was brutal too. But I don't know what else. Tell me, remind me what was bad.
No. I don't know. Like,
That was bad.
I'm,
I try to forget the bad stuff. I mean, there's been things where I've said, okay, we're never going to do that again, and they don't even come to mind, but we definitely have tried, everything. I think, starting Extra Frame with the group of people that helped do that was a big part of it too. And then signing Flow Bowling to kind of take that over was a big win for the PBA. Things have changed since, and really COVID was a big reason why Flow Bowling didn't necessarily work out. It was probably the primary reason, because they went through a lot at that same time. But that was a great get for us, and so that was sad to see that stop. But Extra Frame, could have been, and was a great product, I thought, and the thing was, we worked so hard to get as many people as possible to subscribe, and we had to have subscriptions in order to fund the thing,
Yeah, of course.
or we couldn't do it, and we got up to about 10,000, 11,000 subscribers, and but at the exact same time we started Extra Frame on it was called New Lion platform. The UFC, started on the same platform, doing the same exact thing: regional events, small events, undercard stuff, even, and then putting all their big fights on the platform, on demand afterward, on demand coverage. It was all very similar to what we were doing on Extra Frame, and it was on New Lion. And the UFC ended up with 300,000 subscribers or something like that, and we had 11,000. And if that had taken off, we'd all be about as rich as you could possibly be. And every bowler would be making a ton of money, because that was a really good revenue stream for the sports that had a fan base that would follow them there, and I could never thank the fans that we had and have enough now on Bull TV for supporting the PBA and watching all this stuff. You could have watched I watched the whole PBA 50 tour this summer on Bull TV, and it's just great. It's better than anything on television, that's for sure, for me. And I think for most bowling fans. So we probably need to keep continuing to do a better job of getting more people to invest and give them what they want, so they will invest in watching bowling on any medium.
I will say this: I was massively excited when I saw on the schedule that the USBC Masters, one of the rounds, was going to be on Friday night. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, finally 3-game total pins on Friday night. Bring this on. And then I'm like, it's not 3-game total pins. That's the only thing I wish happened this season.
Yeah, we did. I've done a 3-game total pins match before on TV, two times actually. And the first time it was Walter Ray against Chris Barnes. It was really good. The next time I think it was Patrick Allen against Brian Kretzer. And it was the finals of our match play event we did in Connecticut every year. But it's hard to get a lot of people on board with that. You saw we did it with the Players Championship with a best of 5 match for the title. And we've been doing that for the years that we could on the playoffs, a one-on-one best of 5 match. Things can go a lot of different ways with that. Like this year, Kevin McCune beats Jacob in 3 games, and now you kill a lot of time, and the networks and everybody say, "What are you doing?" Well, we're doing the same thing any sport would do. Tennis has this issue, but they aren't used to it with bowling, so it's really risky when you do it. And then other times you go to a final game, or you might go overtime or something. But at that Masters, while we didn't do what you were hoping, a 3-game total pins, well, that's okay. But we got to the final, and we were able to make that you have to beat the leader twice. Now, that's something that we've never had with the Masters all these years. They've ended with a step ladder, and it's just not fair, to the number 1 seed, that they could lose, and they only lost once, and everybody else got to lose twice during the tournament. So to be able to do that last year and have Simo, bowl Michael Martell, right? And Mike had to beat him twice, and he didn't beat him the first game, so we had to fill again. So it didn't go to a final match. But the year before, Simo beat Norm. Remember, Norm Duke led the Masters the year
Yep.
before. He was undefeated, and then he lost one game to Simo, and he loses the tournament.
Right.
If it had been the next year, Norm would have had another chance at him.
Yep.
You know, so we were happy to be able to do that at the
Sure.
Masters with multiple shows, and I hope we'll be able to do that again this year.
Absolutely. So, kind of a side note, Norm Duke, when I talked to him in Portland, I said, "Man, are you bowling league or anything like that?" He has no bowling balls right now. Are you surprised by that? Or are you like,
Well, he's been to his word. I mean, I tried. I did everything I could. I mean, I think I at least played a role in keeping him out there a few more years than he originally intended.
sure,
I try every year to keep him out there. And right in Portland, I mean, there's pictures, and it was on TV of me talking to him, just trying to convince him. Well, just bowl the Tournament of Champions, and I figured if he does that, he'll bowl them all. And so I was trying. Believe me, I wanted Norm out there, and he just kept telling me, "I'm not going to bowl at all. No PBA 50,
yeah,
nothing."
he told me that.
I saw him throw one ball this year, and it was the first ball at the PBA LBC, the new national championship for all skill levels that we did. He came to the opening day, and he threw out the opening ball. I think he got 8 or 7 or 8.
Yeah,
but he still looked pretty good. I'm sure he'd be fine. But no, he said he's not bowling, and I believe him.
Yep. All right. So in 2009, you start the World Series of Bowling. Is there any part of your brain that says, "What if this fails?" And so, I mean, it's great. I love the World Series of Bowling. What would be a failure for you? Like, how would you have known that wouldn't work? And like, are you surprised that it blew up the way that it did? And it's like, it's huge now.
Well, I'm not surprised that it blew up big. I think it could be bigger. I mean, I want it to be bigger, and I think it can be. It can have even more events and more types of events. And actually, the first one we ever did had more events and more types of events than we even have now. We learned how to refine it to make it a strong element of the season. But it still can be bigger. And I always thought that it would be strong and it would work. But the first year, there were plenty of things to be nervous about. Number one, the players not liking it, because here we are in the same place every day. And you know how, which I understand. Some people just don't like a place and some people do. And
sure, yeah.
Is that fair or not fair? The fans not liking it because of, at first, not anymore. We evolved, but at first, a lot of that was going to be taped. And I don't want taped shows. And I mean, no one that's a big fan of the sport wants tape, but we had to do it in order to survive. And so I worried about the fans. I worried about the players. There was a lot of things I was worried about for sure. And the way what you need to do is anticipate those things and then say, what am I going to do to beat that back? And like you mentioned, that cheetah show from 2009, that was the first World Series.
Yeah.
And because the shows were going to be taped, what I basically said was, well, we got to do something original. We've got to do something that makes being taped be something that fans like. And now you still remember that show 15 years later, and everybody does, because it was a great show. Now, it was way more expensive than they charged us. And when I told them the idea, they said, we'll do it. And then in the middle of doing it, they realized how expensive it was going to be, but they kept their word and they charged what they were going to charge. But that makes it hard to do many times more. I'd love to do it again. I think that Bolero would probably like to be involved with something like that. And we're involved in a lot of different potential content partnerships with people that could do stuff like that, but yeah, that was a way to mitigate the taped show problem. And really built into the World Series concept was this idea of multiple oil patterns and multiple sorry, I gotta plug this in or I'll come offline. Throughout an event that, at the time was sort of unique, and really hadn't been done and much, if at all. And so, now everybody does that. You see all these different tournaments where there's a different pattern every day. And so, and so we were really just trying to do that, to have different disciplines, have different types of A games, be able to feel like they have their day, take away the idea that horses for courses type of thing. And there's always still going to be that, but it made it a little bit easier. So, but you just try to anticipate what could go wrong and then build things in that will beat those things back. And you still might lose, but that's what we did.
I mean, I don't know. That's just when I talked, because I had Norm on the show.
Yeah.
And I talked to him. I said, "You won. That is literally my all," and it probably shouldn't be because it wasn't even a major. But that's if I had to watch. If somebody said I can only watch one PBA tournament for the rest of my life, it's that one.
I always remember there was one quote from Norm. Well, we got lucky that Norm went far in that because he's so fun to watch talk his way through a tournament.
Right.
But I just remember that one line, and he said, it's not the lanes, it's not the rack, it's not the ball. Something is wrong. Fix it.
Yep.
It's great, and you should play that for every kid out there.
Yeah,
that's
down
where Ryan
42.
Yeah. That Mike J said that, and he still gets reminded of it all the time. He was off in the sideline saying he trails by 42 pins, and you just hear Norm say, "How many?"
Well, I asked Norm. I said, if that never happened, do you win the tournament? He said no.
Yeah, I know. It turned the whole tide. It broke the ice in the room. Everybody's laughing. Everybody's on Norm's side. He was getting run over by Simonelli at that point. And then the shots started changing for Ryan. And I love how that show illustrated how many different ways Simonelli was trying to get the ball to carry, and he was trying every ball in his bag, and he was doing all these things. And meanwhile, there's Norm, and boom, 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 and that's not a guy. That's a guy that you can be ahead of and still feel like you're trailing, because he's going nowhere. He's one of the great sportsmen in any sport.
So, would you ever do a tournament like that again in like a documentary? Or, I mean,
for sure, would love to. It's really just a matter of expense. I mean, what we really want, and everybody has wanted this for a long time. We've had a lot of production groups come up is one of these types of documentary series like you see on Netflix for tennis or golf or Formula One. Really struck it gold with theirs this the last few years. It made people start enjoying those sports, and hopefully something like that can happen soon for the PBA. There's been plenty of people that would like to try it, and sometimes they fall through, and you go a long way down the road trying to work with them to make it happen. It doesn't happen, and so hopefully something like that can happen again. What we've seen that's been fantastic with this modern technology and YouTube is the Brad and Kyle and Belmo and Packy and Darren Tang and all these players that have their own channel. J.R. Raymond's is great, and you can watch them compete, in events, and they give you insight. And Belmo's was great this past year at all the majors, and so they're doing their part to keep promoting and give people that type of content.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. So
it's always been tough with the PBA in that, and then we've always just kind of had the Final Five on TV, and in this format that, love it or not, love the step ladder because it's the tradition of the game, but it's really not fair. I mean, it's really not a great. It's kind of it was a gimmick in the first place to say, well, the tournament's over, but it would be boring if it was on TV because the person that led won by 500 pins. There's no mystery. We just would turn it on and watch someone winning a tournament by 1,000,000 pins. So the the original PBA invented this idea of a stepladder final to just say, okay, now we're starting over with the Final Five, and this is how it works. And it's gripping television. Every 20 minutes, there's a loss, and someone's out, and who's going to live and who's going to win. But it's not a great format, from a credibility or integrity standpoint, really. So it's been tough to ever, show bowling for the entirety of a tournament on television like golf does or like tennis does. So that's why we started Extra Frame, and we did give people that opportunity to watch that way, and you could watch the position rounds or elimination match play rounds of tournaments. But to get all of that also on TV, that's why we thought, well, maybe we put it in this documentary style and show everything. And maybe in the future you could do all of that, and then
Mhm.
come on live for a final championship match or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, create a hybrid type of a coverage.
Sure.
So, but no, we're always trying to think about what's the best way to do this and how could we do this better and how can we grow it. So,
What if I'm allowed to ask this, what are grounds for fines and suspensions on the PBA tour?
are you a member? Are you a PBA member?
I'm trying. Did you get
Okay.
my application?
I don't
I
remember.
am on Xbox.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
If you were a member, I was going to fine you for that. So
Oh, okay,
no,
cool.
no, I'm just kidding.
I'll
Um,
put 20 bucks on one after the other.
no, it's fine. You didn't read the rule book, you know. What was the question? What are grounds for being fined?
What are grounds
Oh,
for fines
well,
and
actually, most of our fines are like shot clock violation type stuff
sure,
on TV.
right?
The ones that, or then there's product registration type of issues and
Mhm.
logo placements and more the business side of things. The ones that the behavior type of fines,
Mhm.
and I love to watch players in their real emotion.
Sure.
It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if people swear, even really. It doesn't really bother me if people get upset. It's sports. It doesn't bother me if they get mad, if they get glad, if they're excited, if they're, all the different things, all that stuff. Some people get bothered by it, and some people want other people fined for things like that. I kind of rather have the personalities come out. But what I don't have any I don't have any I don't know what the word is, sympathy for that is if people break things.
Sure.
If you're in a bowling center and you break someone's furniture or you put a hole in the wall
Mhm.
or you kick something or you just treat that bowling center with any kind of disrespect,
Yep.
we really have no. The word is patience. I got no
Mhm.
patience for that because these bowling centers are letting us in their home, so
Yep.
you have to respect that. And so anytime anything happens in that's when there's really no leniency. And now you have this problem with social media, so it's just so tempting for people to go online and look for sympathy or to complain. And you just really want professionals to refrain from doing that because it just puts the wrong stuff out there. It doesn't allow you to be inspirational or aspirational. And that's what we want the pro bowlers to be. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of times you have to kind of rein people in when they are irresponsible really on
Mhm.
social media. So those are
Sure.
really the main areas where you would find any kind of fines.
Sure. So, is there a rule that you have that people complain about and you go, "Wait a minute, that's not that bad of a rule." I guess what is your softest rule that still has to be enforced that people are just like complain about and you're kind of surprised they're complaining about it?
Uh, oh
If
man.
I make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure anything's comes right to mind. I mean, uh, sometimes in the one thing that in the summer, a lot of people really get mad if we ever allow players to wear shorts when they're bowling,
Yes.
and uh, I think when it's really hot in the summer in a regional, if the tournament director says that you could wear the right kind of shorts, that should be okay.
Yeah.
How people dress in the bowling center is one that, first of all, we have a great players committee, and the president currently is Chris Barnes, and so on a lot of this type of stuff, I love to go to the players committee and let them. It's their tour really, and so you really want them to have a voice and some of in the player committee might be really want to be really strict about what kind of clothing is
Mhm.
worn by players when they're in a bowling center and not bowling.
Mhm.
And like they might say you can't wear a hat or a baseball cap or something like that. And I might
Mhm.
see a guy like Jesper or a young guy wearing his cap and think he looks pretty cool. I mean, why would you not want to allow him to do that? So
Right.
we may have conversations about that type of a rule.
Yeah.
And I'm always a little bit more lenient than some people want me to be about
Yeah.
those.
My favorite PBA rule of all time, I don't know why, but you have to wear your name on the back of your shirt. I
Yeah,
love that rule. I
I like that. Some people didn't like that we started having them wear it on the show.
Yep.
For the longest time, like in my days watching, Marshall Holman had to wear Marshall Holman on his back during a tournament, but on TV, never. They didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they first started the PBA, they did. But then, and now we have it. And I kind of like the name. I like the guys who use their signature. I think autographs are a big part of bowling, and all the PBA players have great autographs. They sign a million of them because of all the pro-ams they do and getting around the country. And so I like their names being a part of their personality and being on their shirt, and how they present themselves with their, dye sublimated jerseys is another thing we brought in, after I came. And I think it's become pretty much the uniform for bowling, and makes the logos better and pop better and not be patches that fall off and things like that. But they also give the players an opportunity to show their personality, like what's their favorite things, and they put them on their shirts and like that.
I'm gonna quiz you. Do you know the date and where it was the very first tournament where the pros were wearing, not the Japan Cup, where the pros were wearing the name on the back of their shirt? You remember the tournament?
The name on the back?
Yep.
Well, I don't know.
What was the date and where was it? Do you know?
No, I'm not sure I know what you mean. You always had to wear your name on the back.
No, but okay. So the very first tournament that the pros had to wear the name on the back, and I know this, was September 25th, 2001, Peoria. That's the first time, other than the Japan Cup and other than Danny Wiseman.
You mean on TV?
I mean on TV. Yeah, I mean on TV.
Yeah, with the new PBA with Microsoft guys. Yeah, they like the name too. I wasn't with them at the time, but I like that. I like that move.
What would you say is your strictest rule that you're just like, that people complain about, that you're like, listen, guys, it either like it or don't bowl? What would you say is your strictest rule?
I think I said it before. I think the respecting the building. I think that's the one that would be the most, where I would have no patience for it.
Mm-hmm.
Does anything come to mind? I'm not really thinking about the playing rules right now.
Sure.
I mean, we've the biggest controversial rule that I've been dealing with for 3 years has been this new phenomenon we have with urethane bowling balls, and and the rules of checking for hardness and all that stuff. I mean, that's been a real headache and been very difficult. And so where we landed now, I hope will be where we'll be, and we won't have to address this issue anymore. But that type of rules on equipment and specifications are pretty tough to deal with on a lot of different levels.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, or when the internet was starting out, and I found the PBA, I found a way to email the PBA. I'd always ask them, "Will you guys ever come to Maine?" And they said, "Well, we need a 40-lane center." I'm like, well. And I actually I did a video. This is since you did the PBA league in Portland, but I did a video, and I was at Yankee Lanes in Brunswick, and I was like, Tom, check this bowling center out. You could do like the Pine Tree State Classic, and it's no longer there, but it was Yankee Lanes, Brunswick, 32-lane center. And I thought, why not? Because you guys went to Sproul Lanes, and that was 32 lanes. But how did you ever finally make my dream come true and get the PBA to Maine?
Yeah, that was awesome. I'll never forget it, because our sales and marketing partner at the time was based in Portland, Maine, and he had worked in NASCAR and things. So I just was going to visit him in Portland, Maine. So whenever I go to a city, I check out the bowling centers, and so I went to check out Bayside Bowl, and they knew I was coming, but I walked in on a league night, and Bopo late
That's
league
the night
night
to walk in.
Yeah, and when I turned the corner, and everyone's bowling, and the music's going, the DJs are going. The DJ's got it's awesome vibe in there, and they stopped, and they started chanting my name, and I'm sitting here going, okay, we're going to bring the PBA here. I don't care, whatever. And I went to went to Charlie Mitchell and a few other people, the owner of Bayside, and Justin Alfond at the time. And I'm like, we got to get the PBA. And they even said, well, we only have 10 lanes, or
right.
We only have 12 lanes. We can't host a PBA tournament. And I'm like, no, we can host a PBA tournament in this building. And I'm like, we've got this PBA league. We only need 2 lanes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a television show. So we only need 2. And that's when we also figured out how to use like, I think it was 6 and 7, the middle of two pairs.
PBA. I'm sorry, that's my biggest PBA pet peeve.
Well,
It's like, why not
Well, I'll tell
sustainable?
you, in team events, it's not bad
Okay.
because you have so many bowling balls and you have so many people standing up there that
Yep.
if you can keep, and in Baker, you stay on the same lane.
Sure, yeah.
So to keep them all there, it actually works really well. I agree with you when it's a singles event. I hate it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. If it's over my dead body, we ever do that.
No, I get.
But on a team event, I love it that way. It keeps everything separated, organized better. You can find your ball. There isn't balls on the floor or back over here. And so anyway, but we're like, we've got to be in here. And then the next year we did the PBA League in Bayside Bowl, and it was just the greatest feeling of having people that excited, that were that cool. They're very cool. They're very they're young. Boy, they all have kids and they're older now. We've been there for 10 years. So,
Wow.
it's like all the 20-year-olds are 30, all the 30-year-olds are 40, and everybody's gone through different life changes. But, it was awesome. And then we ended up figuring out ways to do singles events in there too, match play tournaments, different.
Yeah.
And then Bayside, as you know, expanded, and now there are 2 sides. And now, Charlie bought another bowling center in Portland, Maine, another one that I had checked out actually. It's another cool little center down near the water. And I'm looking forward to getting back there in a couple of weeks and going to check out his new place too. But I think it's one of those things where there was always this idea that, well, the PBA can only go to centers with a certain amount of lanes. Well, that's for if you're going to do a full-fledged regional, or if you're going to do a full-fledged PBA tour event. But if you're going to do a special event or a TV show, we can go to any size place. And sometimes we can do an elite event and have like 16 players and be able to go. We just did one at Thunder Bowl in the arena, and just the entire tournament was only in the arena, which is only 20 lanes.
In Allen Park, right?
In Allen Park, yeah. And then the PBA Tour Finals is a place where we've gone to main events and casino bowling centers. The one, Angel of the Winds, where we go now near Seattle for the Tour Finals, which is 8 players, and we just use 2 pairs and watch those guys go basically round robin until they bowl it down. I mean, so we've figured out ways to be able to bowl in any size center.
Yeah. Adam says that the Portland has the craziest fans.
I think I'd go with that. But then they're all different types of fans all around the country. Because Detroit is probably the best volume of fans, the most, and they pack that arena every time we're there with 500 people, and they can do that 5 nights in a row. Milwaukee for the World Series the last couple of years, great crowds every night for TV. Indianapolis is always strong. But in some of the cities, there's such a reverence for the game that they like to be quiet when the player's up. And then in other places like Bayside, they want to be going wild while the player's up. And the players, as long as they know which way it's going to be, they're fine with either. They're fine with either way.
Who do you think you are? I am guy was the guy that said, because Kirk, he did the spiel, like when guys are up, just be quiet. And then Weber's always like, let him cheer. And I'm like, look, I'm thinking to myself, really? That's the guy. Wow, that's interesting. I love it. So thank you, Pete, for that. I mean, that was so I jumped over a question. When I was a kid, you had a summer tour on Thursdays on ESPN. You had a fall tour on Wednesdays on ESPN. What would it take for that to happen on Fox, like a regular, like summer tour, maybe on whatever night of the week, and then a fall tour on another night of the week? What would have to happen for that to happen?
Well, we just need to be successful. I mean, we need ratings. If you have high enough ratings, then they'll want as much as they can get. And they've been very open to special event stunts that we've done, and ESPN was too, like the King of Bowling we did on ESPN2. I remember in ESPN2 had dropped boxing way back. Remember when Wes Malott won King of the Lanes every night, 5 nights in a row?
Yep.
He had like 2 or 3 300s. It was unbelievable. And that event was born out of the fact that ESPN2 was going to have an open Monday night, or was it Wednesday or Monday? It was either Monday or Wednesday night.
I believe, yeah.
Wednesday, for like 5 or 6 weeks because they had canceled their boxing series. And I just immediately wrote them a note and said, we can fill those spots. And they said, well, what would you put in there? Oh, well, we do this. And we just needed a sponsor, and BPAA helped with that. Frank DeSocio helped with that. We got the sponsor. We got the host, Kegel, hosted it. And we had the network, ESPN, and boom, we had a new series that added to our count of shows. And we've done that series with Fox a few times. That was not part of our regular schedule, just added on. Right. So, I know you're talking about legit, tour events and different, fall tour or whatever, that can happen if we've got solid numbers and those numbers result in dollars for Fox and and if sponsors come on board, because now a sponsor wants more television. If it's successful for you, you want more of it. That's all there is to it. And the great thing about bowling is we can give you more. I mean, we can do it. It's not like the NFL can just say, all right, let's put together a game next week. It's not going to happen. Right. They've got their schedule. We can say, all right, let's put together a tournament next week. We can do it. So we just need the demand, and that comes from popularity.
Wes Malott shoots 2 300s in that King of the Lanes and 2 268s. I can't remember what his 5th game was, but yeah, he dominated that. Oh my God. So thank you for answering the regular questions. When I started this podcast, I wanted to do a lot of guys. Let me ask you 10 frames. Let's go 10 frames of Tom Clark. Well, this is called Flush in the Pocket. So I don't know when the last time it was that you bowled 300. When do you remember when it was? Have you ever?
Yeah, I did in a tournament, but I think it was like 1989 or something like that. All right. That was the only, and that's the only one.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna bowl 300, and all you got to do is just use your voice and have a little bit of fun. Let's go Flush in the Pocket. First off, what is your favorite food?
Chicken soup. Everybody knows that.
Chicken soup. Well, I all right. So I'm assuming Progresso or Campbell's.
Progresso has one called Chickarina. Have you ever tried that?
Nope.
That's really good.
Okay.
Campbell's, I'll go Chicken and Stars.
Yeah, there you
go. But no, I find the best the bowling centers that have good chicken soup are my favorite bowling centers.
All right, there you go. Favorite music?
Well, my favorite band is Rush. And
yes.
But then Pearl Jam and old school rap, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, back in the day stuff. But Rush is really my favorite band. So
you're doing a podcast with a diehard country guy, right?
Oh, are you?
No, my God.
I've never been a country fan, and then I got into it with because of Jimmy Allen, who became this great. He's really bold. He was serious about bowling, and I really liked him. I thought Jimmy Allen's great. I like his stuff.
Oh yeah, I got my own internet radio station. Check out b105radio.com. Shameless plug.
Nice.
So, what do you do to take your mind off of bowling? Because I know you're bowling. You're the commissioner of the PBA, and you're probably thinking about it when you're even relaxing. But what do you do to take your mind off of bowling?
I watch a lot of old stuff on YouTube, but and some different podcasts on YouTube I like. But Syracuse sports is really my hobby. It's my favorite thing. Syracuse basketball, Syracuse football. They played today. They won 65-0 over Colgate, which is where Rob Stone went to school. So I let him know. But other sports, watching the NBA playoffs is probably my favorite pro sport. Couple of months, I watch every single night during the NBA playoffs. But Syracuse basketball is my favorite thing.
There you go. What's your favorite hangout?
Bowling alleys. I mean, here in Milwaukee, Alpine Lanes and Country Lanes. They're both kind of on either side of where I live, and 10-minute rides. And my son works at Country Lanes, and
Oh, does he?
bowling centers are fantastic. They got a great bar. They've got bowling. They got people you like. There's plenty of things to do. I've never gotten into this new bowling center stuff with volleyball, and but
Yeah.
I see a lot of people coming in and they're playing a lot of volleyball out there. But the bowling centers are really the best hangout. Good food, and the ones that have good food, good
Yep.
pizza, and good soup.
Yep.
Those are the best.
What do you prefer, the big bowling centers or the small Bayside type centers?
I like the small ones. I
Okay.
do. I like the small ones. The mom and pop, the local owner, and you see how hard they work, and they turn the place. Everybody knows each other when they go, and those definitely are my favorite. 16 lane centers, 24. There's a lot of good ones in Milwaukee like that.
What is your favorite? Oh no, I'm sorry. Do you go to concerts?
Yeah,
How many times have
just
you
went
seen Rush?
to saw Rush about 7 or 8 times, or 7 or
Oh,
8 times.
all right.
But I just went to see a couple weeks ago with my wife. We went to see Stevie Nicks,
Yep.
and in Milwaukee, and she's 75 years old, and it
Oh, I
sounds
know it.
it's
Oh,
the same. She's the same. Amazing. And talk about branding, and any athlete could learn from people like Stevie Nicks, where the whole crowd comes and they dress like her. All the women are dressed like Stevie Nicks, and it's because she had this. Well, she's awesome, but she also has an awesome persona and her own personal brand. And like on the PBA tour, Kyle Troop
oh,
is the
yeah.
best at that, and that's why everybody wants him, and everybody knows him, and everybody wants him at appearances because he's Kyle Troop and he's branded. He's we just had a bowling party at Fox Sports, and they asked me, who should we have come, and I'm like, well, we'll send Kyle Troop, and Kyle was there and bowled with all the Fox people, and I just got in the mail. One day later, they must have written a thank you note saying, thanks for having Kyle. Really lifted the whole event. Brought a wow factor. It was awesome. He's a great guy. I mean, that's what a pro bowler can do.
Yep. I got to say, I think Brad Miller has the best hair. No hair, but let's see here. Hold on here. So, what is your favorite time of day? What is your favorite time of day?
I think it's become the morning, actually, and not getting up, but after a couple cups of coffee, that's when I usually get all my work done, the best work done.
There you go.
You know,
So, other than bowling, what is your favorite sport to watch?
basketball.
There you go. All right. What are you binge watching right now?
Just like basketball. Winning Time. Have you seen Winning Time?
No.
It's about it's really should have been called Showtime. I think they didn't call it Showtime because it was on HBO. But the Lakers '80s dynasty and Magic Johnson with Showtime Lakers. It's a really awesome series.
Is it on Netflix or something?
No, it's on HBO. It's
Okay.
on HBO Max, and
Oh,
yeah, it's an awesome series. Larry Bird, and and it's all acted out. But it's great. And we just started Yellowstone, so we're like 5 years behind on that. So I'm looking forward to binging on that because I heard it was great, and I never got a chance to watch it. So
there you go. Any phobias?
not really. I mean, my biggest superstition is if I see a penny, I have to pick it up.
Oh yeah.
I just stop and I go back and pick up that penny. I mean, it could be in a bad situation. Doesn't matter. I got to have it.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you one when I see you in a couple of weeks. No
I don't want pennies.
No, I get
But
that.
if they're on the floor,
I'll put one on the floor for you. How's that?
Okay.
So, what was your favorite toy? I'm sorry. Party all night or quiet night at home?
It's become quiet now. A little
Okay.
old. I have kids. My son's in college. My daughter is out of college, and So I'm old and quiet is the way to go.
You're not old. You're only 35.
Yeah.
No. Favorite toy as a child?
Uh,
I think we know.
you do?
I
I
think I
don't
do.
know. I think it was like my little Star Wars guys
Oh.
and or baseball cards. You know, I
Okay,
don't
there you
know.
go. I was gonna say your bowling set or whatever, but
Oh yeah, I guess I did. It was probably my favorite toy as a real toddler. You know,
yeah.
but the ones that I really liked, you know, I like those like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker little figurines we had. You know, and then so.
So final question. When you leave this earth, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to say about you?
I don't know. I just did my best. You know, I did my best for bowling and for the players and for the fans. You know, to put the PBA in the best possible position to succeed. And you know, I'll never be satisfied, but I hope that people recognize how I do the best that I can. And I've been around like 15 years in as with the PBA, and I don't think there's anybody out there that would say that I ever told them something that wasn't true,
Mhm.
or I ever said I'd do something and I didn't do it, or I ever said I wouldn't do something and then I did it. Some things change, and there's reasons to have to do certain things, but
Mhm.
boy, that you know, it's funny. I just by saying that, I just remembered the like you asked me earlier the worst time of being commissioner,
Mhm.
and I just thought of it. Like I just thought of it, and I hadn't thought of it in a while, but it was 2013, and we were put in a position where we were going to have to cut like $2 million from a budget,
Mhm.
and I had to to just to stay alive, and had to slash. Um, from every area, including prize money and including closing our entire office in Seattle, which we had
Yeah.
until that year, and um, that was hard. You know,
Yeah.
that's really hard, and it affects a lot of people. But when you're doing it so you can survive and you can see another day, and that's why earlier on I told you
Yeah.
from that 2013 to 2018.
Mm.
After that happened, you know, it was like, okay, there's only a few ways this thing's going to be saved. And it's going to be that we find another media partner and
Mhm.
that we find a big overall either owner or sponsor or a combination of both, um, to be able to bring in the enough money and have enough backstop to grow and not just try to survive and innovate in order to stay alive. And that reminds me of that moment. So sometimes the worst moments, you know, could end up being the moments that you're end up being remembered for.
Well, yeah.
Um, and really because of the sincerity and trying to continue on and keep something going. So I think we're going to be all right now for a while,
Yeah.
and that makes me happy. So
Well, Tom, what Norm Duke said about Jim Stephanage in one of his interviews. What Jim did for me on Saturdays that he'll never know about. What you've done for me as a PBA fan that you'll never know about. You made my dream come true. Being able to buy some of my heroes some beverages and treat them like the heroes that they are. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done and that you do in the future for the PBA. Thank you for your time. That was Flush in the Pocket with Tom Clark. Next week, we've got a tag team. We've got Charlie Tapp and Joe Hutchinson, so that should be good.
ooh,
So
well, that'll be
definitely.
much funnier than me.
Oh man, check that out. So,
Much better stories.
oh man. Well, hey, listen, buddy. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. All right.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you, and I appreciate what you do, and I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, me too, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everybody. Commissioner of the PBA, Tom Clark. So, thank you very much for your time, Tom, and it was greatly appreciated. And so that was awesome. So next week it is going to be Joe Hutchinson and Charlie Tapp. It's going to be awesome. So we'll see you next Saturday night, 8:00. Flush in the Pocket, presented by Brunswick Bowling. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.